Everybody, and welcome to the best practices for pool optimization. We are going to get us started here in a couple minutes. We've got some more people trickling in, so about 3 past the hour, we'll get going. So thanks very much. Okay, yeah, I think we've still got a couple more people trickling in here, and that's fine. We'll catch up. But just know that this broadcast, or this webinar will be available as a recording that we'll distribute, as well as the slide deck. So if you get distracted or have to leave at some point, then no worries. We'll be able to kind of distribute the information. Excited to have everybody join us here on this best practices for pool optimization. Give us a chance to show our next gen optimizer, as well as have us go through some spec duration components that we've been working on for several years now in MCT, and showing that off here. On the show today, we've got Jessica Wisniewski, who is the director of the Client Success Group. She comes to us with many years in the mortgage industry, as well as a former client of NCT. And then we've got myself, Paul Yarbrough, the head of Client Success Group and Data and Analytics, and we'll get started with that. So on the agenda today, two bullet points, but a lot of information packed into these 2 bullet points. I'm going to start us off with going through our pool optimizer that is now available in MCT Live to our clients, and we're happy to kind of show anybody else that wants a deeper dive over anything I was not able to cover here. And then we're going to go right into a very important topic when you're talking about pool optimization. You've got to get those pools from point A to point B, or those loans from point A to point B, and so you may need to hedge those spec prices as well. And there's a lot of volatility, as we all know. So let's get into this. Like I said, I'm going to kick us off here with the pool optimizer, and to start us off, going to take it back to kind of an elementary step here for all of us in the mortgage industry on what we're actually trying to discover, right? And so what we're trying to discover is the optimal combination of loans and their supposed pay-ups that you get if you put certain types of loans together. And so we often refer to these as spec pay-ups, specified pools, custom pools, all of those kind of words interchangeably used, but so ultimately what we're talking about are these specified pay-ups. A specified pay-up, just as a reminder, is something above and beyond like your TBA screen pricing, right? So you see a price for a Ginnie 2.5 in April, and it says a price on there, and supposedly, you'll get that if you put together a group of loans that's a Ginnie 2.5 coupon. Well, if you put loans together that contain similar attributes, for instance, if you say something like I've got a group of loans that has a low loan balance or a loan balance less than 85,000. So that 85K right there. Then on a 5 coupon, I'll get 28 ticks more than what's supposedly on the screen, right? So there's some caveats to that, right? You have to have, maybe there's some FHA only, maybe there's a minimum pool size, right? Like on a custom pool for Ginny, it has to be at least $1 million. There's some other attributes that you should consider there, and those pay-ups kind of go across the board here as far as coupon. That's what you see on the top. Then you have things like VA cash out, or MJN stands for a high balance in Govy, the Govy space. USDA only pools, FHA only pools, right? Geographically driven pools like states like New York or Texas, Florida. Those are some popular ones where you'll see pay-ups are only applied to those kind of groups of loans. And it's only getting bigger. It's the what's being made available as far as the pay-ups go is getting more complex. Freddie Mac, for instance, a couple weeks ago announced their 94 LTV pay-up. So in other words, like there's a pay-up for loans where the LTV is greater than or equal to 94%. Now, where does an optimizer come in? An optimizer comes in and says, should I sell that loan as a 94 LTV, or should I sell that loan? Maybe it's a Home Possible loan with a 97% LTV. Is the Home Possible pay up better, right? So if I've got a loan that qualifies for both, how do I aggregate a group of loans together to achieve that maximum pay up or optimize that? So that's what we're here to talk about today. What in the first half of this webinar, that optimization problem. What we're really excited about is this the way we're processing the data, the way we're kind of coming up with an optimized set of pools, and we're using a very complex processors that come from NVIDIA coined this term CUDA, and you can look that up to understand what it is. But we're able to process this at a very high rate of speed, meaning we can start to include things like I've got an LLB pay up of 85, but then I also have an FHA LLB pay up of 85, meaning I could put a VA loan in LLB pool. But what if I just had another pay up just for 85? But then, oh, by the way, I also have aggregators to consider. So if I'm doing a proper auction to sell these loans released, I may have an aggregator out there putting a bid on a loan, plus I have a Ginnie Mae retained execution, plus I have a Ginnie Mae released PIT or co-issue execution. So got to consider all those things, and also consider the future that there may be more pay-ups to be discovered in the future, right? As we get better at analyzing data, at proving up as end buyers get better at proving up that, man, if I put together this group of loans, I can have some protection on my bond here that it won't prepay sooner. And so that's what we're excited about, is we're going to be able to support that without much degradation in the speed. And again, that comes from enabling a GPU, a graphics processing unit, to process these all in the cloud, secure in the MCT Live platform, so your borrower data is still there and secure, but also get us what we need. So we find that the first problem with any optimization is the price discovery, right? So in price discovery, you could have a loan, and if I just go back one slide, if I've got let's just say in an example, I've got an $84,000 FHA loan in New York. That loan is not only eligible for all of these pay-ups that you see in the blue column, because it's the number here, 85 or lower, meaning that $84,000 loan could be eligible for this 12-tick pay-up in the 350s. But it's in New York, so I've also got this 35-tick pay up to consider here. It's an FHA loan, so I've got a 9-tick pay up. Now you may say, well, Paul, why would I ever consider the 9-tick pay up if I can get 35 in New York, or I can get 85, I can get 28 on the 85? Well, that's where we do unfortunately have this, sometimes we have volume that's going to limit what we can actually create. And so that's our first constraint that we can add into our optimizer here. We can say, hey, there's a spec margin threshold, meaning what's the minimum amount of volume that I can put in a pool in order to achieve that spec payout. That's that spec margin threshold. So so that $1 million there is what we've got listed. This is adjustable in our platform. So maybe you've heard that it's a $5 million threshold, or maybe your organization doesn't have a volume issue, and you know that if I don't have $1 million worth of $85,000 loans today, I'll have them by tomorrow. Maybe you know that about your volume and about your production, and therefore I don't need that spec margin threshold, but I still need something to help me create these pools. So that's why we've got to consider not only the 85, not the New York, not the FHA, we've got to consider all of them, because if I don't have enough of any particular loan tranche to create that pool, then we've got to go and test the waters on the next one, the next available pool. Maybe I do have enough in the 110s, maybe I do have enough in the 125s, maybe I have enough in the New York, and the LLB doesn't matter. Then, and these other constraints here, and we've got more to come as well, like you can see them on the screen. High bow, that's the most popular one, right? We came out, FHFA says you've got no pool, no kind of multi-issuer or major pool can be more than 10% high balance. You've also got constraints like that when it comes to loan amortization terms, like no pool can be more than I think it's 20% of 25 years or less. You've got buy downs, right? The temporary buy downs that have become so popular as we've entered into this seller paid market, to where how do we get people to buy a home? With such high interest rates, maybe they can fund a temporary buy down. I know everybody on the line is familiar with that. You've got first time home buyer pay-ups, and any kind of constraints that you can think of, we're able to add in without any degradation of speed. The other thing I'll draw your attention to is this add loans to population. If you think that, I may not have enough to create a pool today, but I've got stuff in my pipeline that I'd like to consider for this pool, and maybe that gets me to where I need to be. Maybe I've got another 15 loans that's in underwriting approved that I know is going to fund in the next week, because end of the month is coming up. We're all flush with volume right now. And so I want to consider those loans in my optimization. A little bit of caveat there that you need to understand, that if you didn't put those out for bid, there may be an aggregator bid out there you need to consider. But at least you can see the optimization is available to say, like, well, if I just have this 1 or 2 more loans, I could create that pool. That's what this add loans to population functionality does. So like I mentioned, one of the things that we're most concerned about is price discovery. Price discovery, what I'm talking about there is, not only do I have, I know that this loan, if I put it in an LLB 150 for my Ginnie Mae retained execution, that LLB 150 I can earn way over there to the right in that cell that's highlighted in orange. I can earn 102 spot 01 on there, right? But if I don't have enough for an LLB 150 pool, maybe I've got to go down to a 175, a 200, and you can see these prices kind of getting a little worse as we go towards a multi or a TBA type price. And so that's what we want to know as a price discovery. What on any particular loan is every available price to that loan? And so and in an 80 loan pool, and with 5, 10, 30 executions, I may be creating 10,000 possibilities in just 80 loans, right? So that's something that we need to factor in to our optimization problem. And that's, again, what we're excited about, is the speed at which we can process this. And that makes this more complex optimization possible that hasn't been done in the past. So you can see there's little magnifying glasses, and I'm working off a slideshow here. And like I said, please contact us if you're looking to have a more in-depth demonstration of this. But these little magnifying glasses, that gets into the details of the price. So you can see I've got this MSR value, because remember, this is a retained execution. If it's co-issue or PET, we'll have the SRP there. And then I've got, you know, this MSR value, this adjustment, this spec adjustment is available. This is what it'd be for the multi. This is what it'd be for the LLB, and so on and so forth. And then if you've got one other thing that we have to consider here, if you've got a quarter, 3/4 note rate, remember those can, especially on the Govy side, you got 2 coupon executions. On the conventional MBS side, every execution has to be considered there, right? Because you've got a buy up, buy down. Most loans can go into 2 different coupons. So on the Govy side, what we do is if you've got a 5 1/4 note rate, we've got to consider the 5 coupon price and the 4 1/2 coupon price, right? So those are different MSR values. Those are also different spec values as well. You've got a spec pay up in the 4 1/2. That's going to generate more MSR for you. But you also have a spec pay up in the 5, generate less MSR value, but a higher security price. So we've got to balance that out, right? We've got to look at the 2 net prices, and we've got to look at them all across every different spec bucket that we have. So that's what the optimizer is going to do, in addition to the other factors I talked about there. So moving over to the next slide here, we start to get into the optimization. And this is a good example of what I was talking about, where I may not have enough volume to create a spec pool. And so what I've got is I've got these Ginny retained LLB 150 and a 5 coupon there. I've got my original volume is 663,000. My optimized volume is a little over $1 million. Where did this extra volume come from? It came from loans that I couldn't slot to maybe their lower LLB bucket, like where it may have looked like it should have gone. If I've got an $84,000 loan, but again, I don't have $1 million worth of it, then I've got to kind of waterfall that up into the LLB 150. I also have to consider that I may have a high bow in the mix here. If, as you know, if I go back to, and I forgot to mention this, and I promised just I would at the very beginning. This is thank you for Texas Capital, Jerry Levy, for providing these current spec pay-ups here. But if I've got a high bow, it may be worth, on a 5 coupon, it may be, I can put that into a conforming pool and avoid this 10 tick hit. 10 ticks on a high bow these days, we're almost to 900,000 on a high bow loan. 10 ticks on a over a quarter of a point, 0.25% on a high bow $900,000 loan. That hits a little harder than maybe 28 ticks on an $84,000 loan. So maybe I'm willing to give up the pay up on some of these LLBs if I have enough to make a high bow loan. So pretty basic optimization problem there. That's where we kind of all started in optimization, but then now it gets more and more complicated as we've got multiple executions to consider, as we've got more and more spec buckets that's going to carve these things up even more. I've got to have a tool that can process this with some speed and some reliability, and that's what we've developed here. So moving on to this next slide here, giving us a nice summary of what I'm actually going to create. This is what, honestly, it's kind of funny. We go through all the complicated math, and oftentimes what we get, the reaction we get is like, okay, what do I create? What do I do here? And so this is where we kind of summarize this for you and say, all right, here are the pools that you're going to create. We have a holding place in MCT Live called Pool Tracker. This creates that holding pattern for you on your loans. You're able to take those loans and re-optimize them as other things get added or subtracted. And then ultimately, when you have your pool certified and ready to trade, remember, we can go right into our Agile platform and trade those via our MBS pool trading tool there to get put all your bids in one place, process all your swaps, and do all that that functionality for you. So really an end-to-end, just kind of saying, starting with a group of loans, best exing those loans, discovering all the pricing, optimizing my current pools to right in here, giving you a simple layout of here's what you need to execute to aggregators, process some AOTs there if you need to. Here's what you're going to pool, and here's what you're going to ultimately, get out of that execution when you execute those pools and swaps inside the platform. And then you got to write all this. You got to put all this back into your database of record. So pushing all this back into whatever you're using on your side to kind of track all that information as far as your commitment data goes and whatnot. We're always writing that back for you as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Jess here, and she's going to talk about. I've talked about kind of the end game here, right? We're gonna fund these loans, and we're gonna pool them. We're gonna achieve a maximum price that we can. But what happened when we passed some of that price through on the front end to the borrower? How did we get from that spot to what I'm talking about here? Jess gets the more complicated topic here, so I'll let her go.
Thanks, Paul. So yeah, to Paul's point, given that spec was the central component of the pool optimization, we thought that this was a great opportunity to take a few steps back and highlight MCT's spec duration regression analysis, which is on the platform currently. This was designed to more efficiently hedge that spec volatility that Paul just talked a little bit about. The tool is seamlessly integratable into your existing workflows, and it quantifies how prices are actually moving or responding to market moves in real time. So the analysis is a rolling 30-day price analysis. So no, assumptions or static ratios here with this methodology. You are, seeing the almost real-time behavior of each spec, story, and note rate combination, and then you're able to size your hedge accordingly, better preserving those margins and just more effectively hedging overall. So this functionality is probably most relevant to originators that are doing a meaningful amount of spec volume. And we encourage you to reach out to your trading team or to CSG to have a conversation about whether this is something that you want to start utilizing. There is a maybe almost daily but frequent management aspect of this to make sure that you're pushing accurate and up-to-date durations into your hedge. But yes. Reach out to trading, to CSG to dig in further. We'll help you make those decisions and then talk about implementing if it's something that makes sense for you. For our presentation today, I wanted to kind of start with some high-level basics or framing here before we dig into the regression analysis itself. And this is just for purposes of our discussion here, but thinking about a loan's price in two components. One would be, the market-driven TBA component, and the other is common referred to as noise. In regression analysis terms, we refer to that as epsilon. But Paul, if you wouldn't mind flipping to the next slide. So the TBA component obviously explains how the loan price moves with underlying TBA. That epsilon or noise component can be explained by a number of different factors, and we're just listing some of those here. But liquidity shifts, changes to buy-up, buy-down grids, and assumptions from the agencies, bid-ask spread moves, obviously supply and demand in the overall market, and then margin or pricing strategy moves from the investors. Obviously, that's all built into that loan price. All driving some of that noise or variation from the underlying market move. Spec, though, is the most prominent and most measurable of those factors. And because it can have such an impact on your hedge, we will we'll dig in here. But so that difference that we're talking about, that move in underlying TBA versus the loan price itself, is where spec lives. And let's see here. The tool that we're going to dive into here, the regression tool, not only quantifies and measures that, but again, enables you to impact how you're hedging accordingly with the results of that analysis. Paul, would you mind flipping to the next slide? So what we're doing here is isolate
Looks like we lost just there for a second.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, so sorry about that, guys. Yeah, what we're doing here, like I'll pick up where she left off where she gets back on, trying to isolate that that spec movement, right? So we've got, if you look at this UMBS 5.5 note rate or coupon, you see the different prices. Like, so this is just in that first row. We're talking about that 101.5 on 219 down to par 22, a delta of 80 basis points, right? So the pass-through rate there that we're talking about that goes into the 5.5 is the 6 note rate. We're looking at on February 19th at 101.70 price down to par 88. Obviously it had a corresponding drop there. So then we're looking at LLB 110, right? So what we're talking about here is a loan that's $110,000 of originated principal balance, right? Or less. So it could be 109, 108, so on and so forth. So again, same pass-through rate, and we got Jess here. I did a good job of vamping here.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're here in this LLB 110 price movement there.
Okay, yeah. So sorry, the TBA moved about 81 basis points. You can see that that non-spec price moved very closely in line with the underlying TBA, about 82 basis points. And then, as Paul was describing, the 110 line item actually worsened about 94 basis points in that same time frame. The first row that is highlighted gray, we can compare, that spec base price to the non-spec base price to derive what we call an implied spec value. And you can see, that the differential between the TBA move and then that 110K price move in terms of that spec pay up. So it went from something like, 2.07 to 1.95 in that time period. So it worsened about 11 basis points. So taking that back then and normalizing that and thinking about it in terms of a ratio, the 110K moved about 15% faster than its non-spec counterpart. Paul, would you mind? Yep, there we go. So the gap there, that is not, that 11, 12% is not explained by the TBA, obviously. So we can see that spec lost additional value during that move, directionally in line, but it's not specifically captured by the TBA hedge. So that's just a single example of a price move in a very defined time frame. But this shows us how the TBA explains the direction and a majority of the price move, but where the spec can come in to explain the difference. So on this slide, we are looking at MCT Live's regression analysis tool. This allows us again to quantify that difference that we just saw in the example previously, and it gives you the ability then to incorporate that ratio into your model assumptions and to affect the size of your hedge. So I'm going to focus your attention first on the left side of the screen. At the very top, it says synthetic duration coefficient parameters. This is where, we can input our assumptions and drive, results that we're looking for based on, these assumptions. Here I'm looking at Fannie Mae pricing. Under security, I have the UM30 selected, and then I selected just a coupon range of 5 to 6.5 here. On the program dropdown, this is where it will allow me to select any number of spec programs that I want to include in my analysis. For here today, I selected 110 up to, I believe, 175, and then I input a specific note rate range. After inputting your assumptions and you click generate synthetic durations, this runs very quickly and it spits out the results that you see in the table below. I'll focus you first on the columns that are highlighted in green. So these are the results of the regression analysis. And in that very first section, it's telling you or it's describing the price behavior between the CON 30 LLB 110 for a given note rate and that UM35 TBA. If we focus in just on that very first line item, the 575 note rate in the correlation column, so that correlation is measuring the strength and the direction of the relationship between that UM35 and the 110K 575 here. So about 97% correlation. The next column over is the adjusted R squared, and that's measuring the movement, that is explained by that underlying TBA. So all else equal, if we were just deciding hedge based on correlation here, then the correlation picks the hedge. This would be telling me the 5 is the way to go, and the R squared is telling me how good of a hedge that is. And then by extension, that R squared is telling us how much where that gap and how much the spec might be driving in that price movement. Moving then back to the left, the beta column. So this is the derived ratio. So we, in our empirical analysis on the previous screen, we backed into, in that one example, a hedge ratio, a spec hedge ratio. Beta here is doing obviously more complicated, but is doing something similar. And then the duration column is taking the duration of the underlying TBA, in this case, the 5, and it's applying that beta as a ratio to derive that spec duration. Focusing you now on the right, that pop-up window, spec analysis quick view. So this gives you the ability to, quickly see for every story and note rate combination that you selected in your analysis, what coupon we're talking about as far as the measurement, the resulting data, and then the resulting spec duration. You have the ability to, either select all or hand select some, and then push that spec duration into MCT Live to impact your position. This gives you the ability, you can, run the analysis multiple times. You'll see a couple options at the top there where you can, restrict servicing strips, make sure the analysis is, providing a spec duration based on the right underlying TBA, or you can, in my case, what I did here was just apply my current mapping. So this is taking the current, note rate coupon mapping in the platform, and aligning it here so that I am pushing through a calculated spec duration that's based on the hedge that I'm actually hedging, or on the TBA that I'm actually hedging with in the model. Once these values are pushed through, we have a few places that you can see. There's full transparency on the platform. If you're familiar with the pipeline coverage breakdown and the show loan screen, you have the ability to see durations there. You would see the spec durations there. And then also in our program level breakdown by coupon, we show you the loan duration and the trade duration. So you would be able to see the weighted average loan duration, and that would vary if you were applying spec durations into your hedge. As far as best practices, and these are things that we would love to cover with you if you're interested in using the model, so definitely reach out to us. But this is, again, something that you would want to do pretty frequently. We are updating, the underlying durations in MCT Live every morning. So it would make sense to want to do this analysis, recalculate durations, and re-push into your model every morning. Just takes a few seconds, but that's the best way to make sure that you have the most current spec durations on the platform. There's a couple of different ways to think about it as well. But then also just circling all the way back to the beginning, Paul's first slide about spec payups. The analysis that we're looking at here is based on cash window, where we can calculate an implied spec. If you are utilizing MBS durations and you're feeding us payups for, an agency MBS or a Genie MBS iteration, then those also can be, pulled into this analysis, and the results will be based on the change in the spec durations that you're feeding us regularly as well. So a couple different options here and different ways to think about it. But yeah, reach out to your trader or to CSG if you'd love to learn more. And Paul, I think that's about a wrap for me.
Yeah, so no, a lot of information there, Jess. That was awesome. I think
Yep. One more slide here to pull it home. Sorry about that. So just a summary, capturing the combined effect of that market move and the spec move, measuring that price sensitivity by program and note rate, and then again, calculating the effective spec durations, just a summary of that spec regression analysis, and highlighting the opportunities or the key points here, right? Sizing the hedge more precisely, better hedge alignment, reducing that P&L noise, and then better understanding of that dispersion overall. And now for real, Paul.
No, it's good, Jed. It's like I said, a lot of good information packed into this webinar here. Can go talk for hours on this, and we've talked for several months and years on fine tuning this functionality, and it's very important to understand this is not just like a note rate level hedge. This is getting down into the spec with the specific note rates on each type of spec, and using that, putting the cart before the horse, using some of that execution at the end of the day that we talk about on the optimization piece that drives this component here. So, it's all about that, what's my end price and how much you're passing through. So in this very competitive market, as we all, as lenders, try to compete for less loans, right? We've got to get more creative on what we can pass through to the consumer there. And if we're passing that through, we've got to hedge it, right? That may not it may not be there when we get there at the end of the day. So this component here is very important, allowing you to still use those what we know as those very versatile TBAs, but still being able to hedge them or use them as an effective hedge using this functionality. So with that, I forgot to mention at the top, like, we can take questions here on the little webinar question portal. We don't have any now, but like I also said, we'll have this deck and this recording. If you're looking for something to entertain you instead of a show tonight, maybe watch this again and tell us what you think. Any feedback is welcome, as well as reaching out, like Jess was saying, if you're already an MCT client, reaching out to your trader or client success group rep to get some more information, or even if you have one of our sales directors that you're working with, and reaching out to them, or just Jess and I ourselves. We appreciate you attending today, and with that, we'll close it down. So thanks very much, Jess. Great job as always, and talk to y'all later.